I was just looking at one of the videos by Veritas48. It was a response he made to somebody else. I can't remember the name of the person, but I will provide the necessary links. And it was answering a series of questions, kind of as a, I guess somebody had made a kind of retort to Veritas48's video about 5 questions for atheists. And someone had posed 5 questions to Veritas48, which he, very graciously, I thought, answered. He's obviously quite a thoughtful chap, with a series of quite well thought out and well articulated convictions, which I don't share, but I can appreciate the level of commitment. But there was some bits in it which gave me serious pause, really. And one of the bits that jumped out was this thing about Jesus and the necessity for there actually to be an historical Jesus, for there to be any, not so much of any value to Christianity, but for Christianity and the beliefs of Christians to make any sense. And that's, well, I mean, first off, just to get it out of the way, there was an obvious conflict there for me between that and Veritas48's opinions of young Earth creationists, which is a bit, I have to say, a little bit hypocritical, because I'm assuming that young Earth creationists hold their beliefs about the age of the Earth with as much sincerity and see it as much a requirement of their faith as Veritas48 does for the existence of the historical Jesus. Yet he didn't seem to acknowledge that. So I think there is a bit of a double standard there going on. But more importantly, I think it's this stuff about the necessity that Jesus exists as an historical figure. I mean, the first thing is the attitude that brings to the status of that which really exists. Now, that which really exists, in my thinking at least, in the way that the historical Jesus is talked about, it exists in a way which is open to scrutiny, open to examination by the tenets of methodological naturalism, for example. I mean, that's kind of almost the definition of that which exists. You can look at it, you can test it, you can you can do experiments to verify its existence, all those kind of things. That's what existence kind of is. I mean, and to the extent that we want our historical Jesuses to be real, we want them to be able to pass those tests with flying colours. And if they don't pass, if we carry out these tests to see if historical Jesus was real or not, and he fails the test and it turns out he's not real, then that's a blow. He suffers as a result, which is a shame, really, because if we, and I'm using the royal we here because I don't obviously believe this, but if Veritas48 and if Christians have this faith in the supernatural, which I as a methodological naturalist do not have, then why is the ultimate arbiter of value found in the natural world? A natural world apprehensible to scientific inquiry, to historical processes. Why does Jesus need to exist in anything other than a supernatural way to have value? That's the first oddity I find about that. I have to say, I think that's also part of things like the ontological proof of the existence of God is a kind of unwritten or slightly understated assumption within that argument, that to exist is inherently greater than to not exist, i.e. to be a thing is better than to be an idea, which again is I would say at least questionable. Personally, I know lots of ideas which are much more valuable than things, and conversely I know lots of things that have negative value. So I just don't get that. There's a kind of strange materialism going on there behind the scenes. And the second thing about this desire that the historical Jesus actually exists, and if he didn't exist, that would be a kind of spanner thrown into the works of faith, is what it says about the wisdom of the historical Jesus, or the wisdom of the hypothetical Jesus. It seems a bit odd. It's an odd kind of wisdom. that stops being wise, that stops being relevant, that stops being useful, that stops being an organising principle in people's lives, is an odd kind of wisdom if it disappears when the person disappears. I mean, if you compare that to a great scientific theory, you know, if it was found out tomorrow that Charles Darwin was a fraud, he didn't come up with any of these discoveries at all, he never went on the Beagle, he stayed at home and put his feet up and watched the TV for 5 years and somebody else did the journey, it wouldn't make any difference at all to the ideas that came back. It wouldn't matter at all if Einstein plagiarized all of his findings. You know, relativity would still be, you know, a brilliant idea. So again, I'm just curious why the idea becomes devalued if historical Jesus disappears. That's a shame. I suppose the only other thing, which is something I've been going on a bit endlessly recently, is this thing to do with belief. You know, what is the necessity of belief in that picture? I don't get it really. You know, belief is just one of a whole series of attitudes that one can have to a proposition. You know, there is a tree there, and so I have a proposition in my head that there is a tree in front of me. Yeah? And right now I'm looking at the tree and I'm believing that proposition. But my believing that proposition doesn't change the tree at all, doesn't change me at all. I could just as easily love the tree, I could just as easily doubt the existence of the tree, I could just as easily entertain the possibility of chopping the tree down, I could entertain the possibility of climbing the tree. All sorts of other relationships I can get into with that tree and the proposition of there being a tree in front of me, only one of which is belief. So why is that one above all else held up as the one that's required, really? To the extent that you have to say the creed. You know, when I was a kid I went to Sunday school and I learnt the creed, I can't remember it now, but we learnt the Nicene Creed, and I didn't get it then, I don't get it now really. I guess it's a kind of promise, isn't it? But yeah, it's a bit like swearing an oath. I don't know what it is. Anyway, there's something funny going on there. I don't know why belief is important, I don't know why historical Jesus is important, and I don't really know the difference between the absolute necessity of believing in historical Jesus as opposed to the slightly less necessary possibility of there being a 6,000-year-old Earth as opposed to a, whatever it is, 4.5 billion-year-old Earth. Who makes the rules up? Look at this aeroplane. You see that? I'm in the woods and there's an aeroplane going overhead leaving this pinky vapour trail, perfectly matching the moon that's come through the cloud. I'll just hold the camera until the plane passes the moon. There it goes.